I'm trying to report a missing person from my daughter. She hasn't shown up from work. I'm just finding out about this. Everybody's freaking out.
2 long years have passed since Christina Morris disappeared without a trace from a parking garage in Plano. A grainy surveillance camera captured her final moments. It was the last image of her alive. Plano police held a chilling theory. She was abducted and murdered by the man accused of taking her from the shops at Legacy. After 3.5 agonizing years, the search for 23-year-old Christina Morris concludes in this desolate field, just east of Highway 75 in Anna. Sources have now confirmed to Fox 4 News the remains discovered here yesterday belong to 23-year-old Christina Morris. The timeline begins at 3:50 in the morning. A call pings from Enrique Orochi's phone to Hunter Foster. 3 minutes tick by. 2 more messages follow. Moments later, security footage captures a chilling sight. Enrique and 23-year-old Christina Morris walking together into a Plano parking garage. 3 minutes. That's all it takes. Then, only his vehicle emerges from the shadows. Her car remains unmoved. Christina Morris is never seen alive again. The date, August 2014, Labor Day weekend. She had come in from Fort Worth for a night out with old school friends at the shops at Legacy. But the evening had soured after a fight with her boyfriend. She was visibly shaken, but trying to keep her composure. She'd only had a couple of drinks. Her plan was simple, just drive home. But at 2:12 a.m., a text message reveals a change of heart. She asks her boyfriend for a ride. The reason? She couldn't find her keys. He never responds. By 4 in the morning, she decides to leave her friend's apartment, and waiting for her is Enrique Orochi. 10 minutes later, a friend calls. Christina's voice comes through the line. They're almost to her car, she says. She makes a promise. She'll text the second she's safely inside. The text never comes. On camera, she appears to be walking with Enrique willingly. There is no visible struggle, no hint of coercion. Then, they disappear from the camera's view. The next image the lens captures is his car, alone, pulling out of the garage. For more than an hour afterward, a digital trail shows both their phones pinging off the same cell towers, traveling together. Then, at 4:56 a.m., her phone signal vanishes, permanently. His phone continues its journey home. The next day, Christina doesn't show up for work. Her phone rings unanswered. Her car is discovered, locked tight, but her purse and phone are gone. Around the vehicle, there is no evidence of a fight, nothing to suggest a violent encounter. And that silence is what's truly terrifying. When questioned, Enrique claims total amnesia, telling police a story of a blackout night fueled by 10 shots, 5 or 6 beers, Adderall, and marijuana. His initial story is that they parted ways long before ever reaching the parking garage. But the silent witness of the surveillance tape exposes his lie. His story begins to crumble. Now, he offers a new possibility. Maybe their cars were just parked near one another. Perhaps that's why they were walking together. But his own body tells a different story, a story of scratches and deep bruises. His knuckles are raw and broken. There's a mark on his skin that looks disturbingly like a bite. His explanation? A car repair gone wrong. But that story changes too. Now, he claims the injuries are from a fight. Then, in the early hours of that morning, before work, he makes a suspicious stop at a car wash. Cameras there record him standing motionless, staring intently into the trunk of his car for a long moment before he begins to clean it. This wasn't just a quick rinse. He scrubs it meticulously, methodically, as if determined to erase every single trace of something left behind. Forensics would later find Christina's DNA inside that very trunk, not in one spot, but several, in quantities so significant experts say they could never be from accidental contact. This was no coincidence, no innocent transfer, but Christina's body is still missing. He is charged with aggravated kidnapping. His plea, not guilty. He argues the DNA was planted, or perhaps it was the result of cross-contamination. That is his defense. 4 years after she vanished, a grim discovery is made in a rural field near Anna, Texas. Human remains. They are identified as Christina Morris. But due to severe decomposition, an exact cause of death is impossible to determine. Today, he serves a life sentence, and he has never revealed the truth of what happened in those 3 terrifying minutes inside that parking garage. To truly grasp the full horror of this story, we must return to where it all began. Our story unfolds in North Texas, a land where modern America collides with the untamed spirit of the Old West. It draws people to the gleaming skyscrapers of Dallas and the authentic cowboy soul of Fort Worth, beckoning them out onto the vast, unending Texas plains. Here, everything is larger than life. The sprawling highways, the massive cities, the generous stakes, even the sky itself seems to stretch on forever above the prairie. By day, you can navigate business districts walled by shimmering towers of glass. By night, you might find yourself lost in the sound of live country music, or witnessing a real cattle drive making its way through the historic stockyards. It is a place of contrasts, bold, sprawling, and electric with energy. North Texas instills a sense of limitless freedom and boundless space. It creates a feeling that anything is possible. Here, the legacy of the cowboy is woven directly into the very rhythm of a modern, bustling metropolis. So, I'm curious, what city are you watching from tonight? And what time is it where you are? Drop a comment below. I'd love to know where this story is reaching. Sound off in the comments below. And as you do, I'll continue with what happened. North Texas was home to 23-year-old Christina Morris. Her father, Mark, remembers that even as a little girl, she thrived on being around other people. She drew friends in effortlessly. She was an open book, never one to be timid or keep her feelings locked away. If a hand was needed, hers would be the first in the air. That was the core of her character. Her parents went their separate ways when she was just an infant. Christina spent most of her upbringing with her father, her stepmother Anna, and her siblings. But she also shared an unbreakable bond with her mom, Johnny, who considered Christina the singular love of her life. When Johnny later married a man named Ronnie, Christina would say it felt like she had 4 parents instead of 2. The family was a tight-knit web. They were all deeply connected. After getting her marketing degree, Christina took a position with an online dating platform. Shortly before everything went dark, she was offered a transfer to the photography division, a move that meant the world to her. This was where her heart was, in photography and design. It wasn't just another job. It was the dawn of a vibrant new era. For about a year, Christina had been with 23-year-old Hunter Foster, but their history stretched much further back. They had known one another since the 7th grade. For a time, their relationship had been a long-distance affair. Hunter was chasing a career in modeling and acting, a pursuit that had him spending considerable time in New York. He finally relocated back to Texas, and they moved in together, sharing an apartment in Fort Worth. Their romance, however, was turbulent. The distance had created a strain, and making the sudden switch to living under the same roof full-time is a monumental adjustment for anyone. At the time, Hunter was out of work. He spent his nights and days consumed by partying. Christina, in stark contrast, was pouring all her energy into her career. She shouldered the entire financial burden. Supporting them both, that kind of pressure's a slow poison. Friday, August 29, 2014, was the start of Labor Day weekend. A celebratory energy filled the air, with parties planned everywhere. Christina was eager to join in, but that day, the simmering tension with Hunter erupted into another fight. She escaped to her car, dialing her friend Taylor to unload all the stress, the friction, the gnawing doubts, and the frightening uncertainty of their future. Taylor listened, offering comfort, and Christina resolved not to let the conflict destroy her night. She was determined to dress up, meet her friends, and just find a moment to breathe. In her car, she captured a quick selfie before starting the 45-minute journey from Fort Worth to Plano, where a small reunion with old school friends awaited. The evening began at the apartment of her friend, Paulina Petrosky. By approximately 11 p.m., the group had descended on the area known as the Shops at Legacy, hitting Henry's Tavern before making their way to a place called Scruffy Duff. At 11:35, a surveillance camera recorded Christina, Paulina, Sabrina, Boss, and Enrique Orochi walking together down the street. Just a group of friends on a night out. Nothing seemed out of the ordinary. After last call echoed through the bars, the group, along with several others from school, retreated to Paulina's apartment. Witnesses later recalled that while most people were heavily intoxicated, Christina had intentionally nursed only a couple of cocktails. She was making a conscious choice to stay clear-headed enough to drive home if she needed to. The fight with Hunter cast a shadow over her, however. Her mood was a pendulum, swinging back and forth. One moment she was engaged, the next withdrawn and silent. A heavy weight was clearly on her mind. At 2:12 in the morning, Christina sent a text to Hunter. She couldn't find her keys and needed him to pick her up, but he was out with his own group in downtown Dallas. Her message went unseen. As the minutes ticked by without a reply, her frustration mounted, and she fired off more texts. Still nothing. You can almost feel her staring at the phone's dark screen, a single thought flashing. Seriously? For a brief moment, she weighed the option of just staying at Paulina's. It would have been the simplest path, but then she found her keys. The moment they were in her hand, her plan shifted. She had to see Hunter, to confront the issue head on and clear the poisoned air between them. Her phone's battery was flashing its final warning, so driving back seemed to be the only move. She typed another message. I'm sorry. I really am. Why can't you just talk to me? Good night. I hope you're okay because I'm not. My phone's about to die. After sending that last message, she left Paulina's apartment and walked toward her car. It was approaching 4 in the morning. The festivities were over. Everyone else was either heading home or collapsing for the night. Hours later, as the sun began to rise, people started to wake. Many of them, still nursing the effects of the night, began the customary wellness check, texting to confirm their friends had gotten back safely. The usual, quick, you home safe messages were sent, but Christina's phone offered no reply. Every call was met by the cold indifference of voicemail. At first, panic didn't set in. She had a work shift scheduled for later that day. Perhaps she was just sleeping it off. The first assumption was simple. A dead phone. Maybe she was just rushing to her job. But her shift began, then it ended. Christina never clocked in. When a second shift passed with only silence, her friends, seized by a growing fear, finally called her mother, Johnny. But Johnny hadn't spoken to Christina either. And in that moment, a cold dread began to form the kind of primal instinct that screams when something is terribly wrong. Johnny's first call was to Hunter. It went straight to voicemail. Her next was to her ex-husband, Mark. He answered, but he knew nothing. By 11 p.m. on September 2nd, the fear was made official. A missing person report was on file. I need to report a person missing. It's my daughter. She never showed up for her shift at work. This is the first I'm hearing about it. Everyone is panicking. Does she have a vehicle? Yes. A 2001 Toyota Celica. She was last spotted in Plano, but she resides in Fort Worth. The last trace of her was at 3:45 a.m. Saturday morning. To find answers, detectives began at Paulina's apartment. She gave them the precise location where Christina had parked. But when the officers stepped into the parking garage, the entire investigation shifted. Her car was there, parked on the first level, locked. The situation had just become terrifyingly real. Around midnight, Mark and Anna arrived and opened the car themselves. Inside, a critical clue was gone. Christina's phone was missing. Her purse had vanished as well. But there were no overt signs of violence, no shattered glass, no dented doors, nothing strewn on the concrete nearby. The scene didn't point to an attack at the vehicle. The horrifying implication was that she never made it back to her car. Whatever happened, it took place before she reached the garage. Paulina gave investigators their first lead. She had watched Christina leave the building with Enrique Orochi. They departed together. After they walked out of sight, her knowledge ended. What took place in the moments after they left the building? She had no idea. The detective's next question was pointed, "What can you tell us about Enrique?" The answer was chilling. Almost nothing. Paulina's introduction to Enrique had only been a few months prior. Their only real shared history was attending the same school. He was a recognizable face, but a stranger nonetheless. Since the gathering felt like a small class reunion, she had invited him to tag along. When detectives finally reached Enrique, he promised his full cooperation, but he had a problem. His memory of the night was a complete haze. He admitted to consuming about 10 shots of liquor, 5 or 6 beers, and taking Adderall. He had also smoked marijuana, and that was only what he could recall. He swore he'd barely spoken to Christina all night. He also offered a convenient excuse. When he mixes substances, he's prone to blackouts, where entire blocks of time simply vanish. His story was that they left the apartment together, but parted ways at the edge of the complex. He claimed she continued on her own, in a completely different direction. That was his version of the truth. Hello? Hi, Is this Enrique? This is Detective Kathy Stano with the police department. What time are you done with work? I'll be getting out of here shortly. Okay. I was hoping you might be able to come down to the station so we could speak with you about Christina. Obviously, everyone is becoming extremely concerned, right? There's still no sign of her. So, yeah, I want to help. You told us you were leaving at the same time as Christina, and that you both walked toward where the cars were parked. Is that accurate? We went in different directions. We walked to the end of the apartment property, and from there we split up because my car was in a different lot than where she was. Okay. Well, I hope I hope you can get free soon. This is becoming very serious, and we need to find her. I'm about to clock out now, and I'll head right over. Okay. We appreciate your cooperation. Enrique claimed he remembered seeing Christina on the phone, her voice raised in anger. While he didn't know the specifics, police knew she'd been fighting with Hunter all day. That forced investigators to rule out one terrifying possibility, that Hunter had met her there, and their argument had taken a fatal turn. For his part, Enrique had made no attempt to contact Christina. He never even reported her disappearance. Hunter told detectives that when she didn't return, he just assumed she had gone to her parents' house or maybe gotten arrested for a D. He also claimed to have lost his phone that night, explaining why he had suddenly gone dark. According to him, his mind was simply elsewhere, but the digital evidence told a far more sinister story. At 3:50 in the morning, a call was initiated from Enrique's phone to Hunter's. It seemed Christina had used Enrique's phone in a desperate attempt to reach him. Following that call, 2 texts were sent, one at 3:53, the last at 3:55. When detectives requested to see Hunter's phone, his demeanor changed. He refused, saying he wasn't comfortable turning it over, and asked if he was free to leave. To the investigators, his reaction set off immediate alarm bells. The woman he'd been dating for a year was gone, the situation was critical, and he was already refusing to let them search his phone. Then again, after the fight they'd had earlier, perhaps he genuinely believed she just wanted to be left alone. On the surface, his explanation was entirely plausible. And when investigators began calling his friends, they all backed him up, confirming his alibi for the entire night. Over the next few days, a digital trail of cell tower pings and bank records painted a clear picture. Hunter had been nowhere near Plano. The real reason for his secrecy soon came to light. That very evening, he had sold narcotics to an undercover federal agent in downtown Dallas. It was the reason he'd guarded his phone so fiercely. In a strange twist of fate, that criminal act became his ironclad alibi, forcing police to reset their entire investigation. They started re-interviewing everyone from the party, and that's when they brought in a man named Enrique Orochi. Several guests found it odd that his name was even being mentioned. They recalled Enrique showing almost no interest in Christina all evening. The two had barely spoken. His attention, it seemed, was captured by someone else entirely. Her name was Sabrina, the fourth and final person captured on camera at 11:30 as the group headed toward the bars. Witnesses described a tense moment back at Paulina's apartment when Enrique grew agitated, refusing to move from a spot because he was determined to sit next to Sabrina, who clearly wanted nothing to do with him. Later that night, Sabrina went into the guest bedroom to get some sleep. Just a few minutes later, Enrique followed her into the room and declared, "Fine, I'll just go home then." Those were his exact words. He then collected his things, and as it happened, he left at the exact same time as Christina. The two of them walked out of the apartment together. Around 10 minutes after they left, Christina's friend Steven called to see if she'd reached her car. She answered the call. She told him they were almost at the car and promised to text him as soon as she was safely inside. That detail was a crucial piece of the puzzle. It confirmed she was not alone, shattering Enrique's later claim that they had already parted ways. He was still by her side. 5 minutes later, Steven sent another text, asking if she was all right. The message was delivered, but Christina never responded. The message appeared in a green bubble on his phone, which suggested her device had lost its signal, a detail consistent with being deep inside the concrete parking garage. The cameras captured them, Enrique and Christina walking side by side. First, they were seen near a bank, walking toward the parking complex. Then, they were recorded entering the garage itself. And while security footage rarely reveals everything, one fact was crystal clear to police. Based on the footage, she was walking with him willingly, occasionally falling a step or two behind. There was absolutely no indication of force, no hint of a struggle, nothing to suggest she was in any kind of danger. But tragically, the cameras aimed toward Christina's car deeper inside the garage were motion activated and they never switched on. The tape was blank for 3 full minutes until another camera captured a single image: Enrique's car leaving the structure. Christina's car was untouched. She never emerged from the garage on foot. The inescapable conclusion was that she had to have left in a vehicle, and the only one seen leaving in that time frame belonged to Enrique. It was an unavoidable conclusion for the investigators. A woman from Fort Worth had vanished inside a Plano parking garage, and there was still no trace of her. A second vehicle had left the garage around the same time, but it belonged to an Uber driver searching for his passenger. Investigators rapidly identified both the driver and the passenger. More security footage and cell data meticulously confirmed their travel path. After cross-referencing all the data, police were positive neither individual was involved. They were completely cleared of any suspicion. And so, all eyes turned back to Enrique. He was brought in for another round of questioning. They spread a map of the parking complex on the table in front of him, demanding he pinpoint the exact location of his story. He repeated the same story, claiming he had parked his car in a totally different area. He claimed they had used a separate entrance and that he and Christina had gone their separate ways long before ever reaching the garage. Then, the police played the tape, knowing every word he just said was a lie. As the video began to play, his confidence evaporated. He fell completely silent. He appeared stunned, faltering, as if searching for an escape. "Is that your car?" "No." "There's a problem with that answer, Enrique. This photograph was taken inside that garage. That is a picture of you walking into the garage with Christina, and that is your car exiting the garage moments later." Faced with the evidence, his story buckled. He now claimed that he and Christina had, in fact, walked all the way to their cars together. He even added that their vehicles were parked right near each other. And then, he offered another detail. He suggested that maybe, at some point that night, he had moved his car and forgotten all about it. It was a desperate attempt to explain it away as a simple mix-up, a slip of the mind. But by then, investigators were seeing a clear and disturbing pattern. His story was a moving target. Each time investigators presented a new fact, his narrative shifted just enough to evade it. A constant scramble to make the pieces fit. They just parked, he claimed, and she simply walked away. "That's the whole story," he insisted. "I don't track every person's comings and goings." He feigned regret. "Normally, I'd watch to see where she went. Yeah, that was a mistake." But then came the excuse. The investigation was stalled. There was no camera footage of her getting in his car, no forensic evidence at the scene, and not a single shred of motive. When detectives pressed to search his vehicle, he refused, inventing an urgent business meeting the next day that required him to have his car. That was his final answer. But officers couldn't ignore the evidence on his own body: raw scratches, dark bruises, busted knuckles, and a mark that looked chillingly like a bite. He blamed it all on a car repair mishap. He spun a tale of a tire falling on his arm and claimed he'd punched his vehicle out of sheer frustration, denting the panel. But soon, that story collapsed too. He finally confessed he had been in a fight. With who? He wouldn't say. When he finally let them see the car, the interior was suspiciously pristine, obviously vacuumed and scrubbed clean. Investigators located the dent he spoke of, but without a warrant, their hands were tied. A deep forensic search was off the table. Enrique was free to go yet again. At that moment, the official police line was that he was not a person of interest. The case now hinged on the cell phone data, their last hope to trace his path after he left that garage. Enrique's job was managing a Sprint store in the town of Allen. That Saturday morning, he was scheduled to be at work at 8 a.m., just 4 hours after he was last seen with Christina. His coworker told detectives a different story. He didn't show up until 3 hours later, and when he finally limped through the door, something was terribly wrong. He was a mess, disheveled, and walking with a pained gait. He complained that his ribs were aching. He moved through the workday in a fog, disoriented and behaving erratically. The reason for his lateness was chilling. Before work, he had made a stop at a car wash. The security cameras there told a haunting story. They showed him standing for a long moment, simply staring at the trunk of his car. Then he opened it and began to clean the inside with obsessive care. By now, 5 days had crawled by since Christina had vanished into thin air. The skies above Plano were filled with helicopters and drones. Search teams swept through fields and woods. They found nothing. Heartbroken family members handed out flyers and pleaded with the public, but no one called with any real information. The reward money climbed to $25,000. All that remained was the digital trail, the silent data showing which cell towers Enrique's and Christina's phones had last contacted. The records revealed that from the moment they entered the garage, their phones were pinging off the very same towers. At 4:56 in the morning, over an hour after they disappeared from the camera's view, their phones were still electronically tethered, moving in unison. Then, Christina's phone blinked out of existence. Enrique's, however, kept signaling for another 30 minutes, creating a digital map of his route until he reached his home. All told, his drive spanned about 1.5 hours. And yet, facing this damning timeline, Enrique clung to his story. He even took the audacious step of speaking directly to the news media. Bombshell documents are revealing new details about the man questioned by police following the disappearance of a young woman in Plano. Enrique Orochi spoke with Fox 4, addressing what police described as false statements that have crippled their investigation and the search for Christina Morris. "I just want to declare that I am innocent. I did not do anything to Christina Morris. It's not a matter of lying. I honestly forgot where my car was parked. I'm a very distracted person. My sense of direction is terrible. I didn't even recall letting her use my phone to call her boyfriend. The detectives were the ones who told me I did. And they asked, 'Well, can we see your phone?' And I just showed them my phone." Investigators had also cataloged what looked like recent damage to the front right fender of his Camaro, alongside bruises on his right forearm and scrapes on his right hand. "One of the rims fell and hit my arm. I got so angry that I was hurt, I just wanted to lash out at something. So I took it out of my car. I hit it twice." Authorities state that his story is inconsistent with the vehicle's damage, and they highlighted his response to a coworker's description of his condition the day after Morris disappeared. "She's just an employee. I told her nothing. I have no idea where she fabricated this story about me being in a fight, which is a total lie. People are making me out to be some kind of monster, when in reality, I am one of the nicest people you will ever find. I am in no way connected to her disappearance." Hunter, who had since been cleared of any involvement, spoke to Christina's parents and the press. He confessed that he was emotionally shattered, describing himself as unstable, overwhelmed, and being eaten alive by guilt. A single tormenting thought haunted him. Had he only gone to meet her that night, she might still be here. The alternate reality, the one where he showed up and everything was different, played on a relentless loop in his mind. That desperate hope refused to die. I just need her to walk through that door, alive and safe. The streets soon filled with the faces of Christina's family and friends, their voices rising into a single, unified demand for Enrique to break his silence. Her father, Mark, pleaded, "All we ask is that Enrique talks. I am not pointing a finger at him, but he must know something." None of this adds up, but Enrique insisted he wasn't running. He claimed he was merely protecting himself. "I get on my knees for them every single day, for me and my family. When I am in church, I look to God and I beg him, please, guide them to Christina. Let this nightmare finally be over." Then, as November dawned, the news broke like a shockwave. Plano police had officially declared Enrique a suspect. They were quick to make a critical clarification, however. At that moment, they were not accusing him of physically harming Christina. The charge, as it was carefully framed, was for obstructing the investigation. But that charge was the key, unlocking the one thing investigators desperately needed: a search warrant to conduct a complete forensic teardown of his vehicle. This time, science would deliver the truth. Inside the trunk of Enrique's car, in multiple locations, they found Christina's DNA. And this was no mere trace amount, nothing that could be explained away by an accidental brush or sharing a space hours before. The concentration was substantial. Forensic specialists concluded it could have only originated from one of two sources: saliva or blood. Statistically, the odds were astronomical that the DNA belonged to anyone else. 24-year-old Enrique Orochi was held on a $1 million bond. An Orochi family spokesman claimed Enrique had been deeply depressed since his arrest around 8 o'clock Saturday morning at his parents' Allen home, as investigators hauled out evidence late into the night. The The spokesman vehemently denied any suicide attempt but confirmed Enrique was being held under constant observation. Police made the chilling confirmation. The DNA from Orochi's Camaro was a perfect match for Morris. The moment I heard, I just stopped and prayed with all my might, whispering, "Please let this lead somewhere." Miguel said she held on to the belief that Morris was alive, possibly taken by traffickers. Police revealed the lab results were only one part of the damning evidence. There were other things we established which were instrumental in obtaining that warrant. For Christina's memory, and for justice to prevail, it is crucial that we remain patient. Investigators and prosecutors pieced together two dominant theories about the events of that night. Both theories were founded on the conviction that Enrique made an unwanted sexual move on Christina, likely fueled by the sting of rejection and humiliation after Sabrina had turned him away only minutes before. The first theory posited that Enrique made his advance as they approached their cars, and Christina flatly refused him. In an alcohol-fueled fury, he attacked her, forced her into his trunk, and vanished into the darkness. That large dent marring the side of his car, the one he claimed was from his own fist, might have been inflicted during a brutal struggle with Christina. The injuries scarring his knuckles, prosecutors contended, were not from striking metal. They were from striking her. The second theory, which many considered more plausible given the tight 3-minute window between them entering the garage and his car speeding out, painted a slightly different picture. In this scenario, Enrique might have offered her a ride back to Fort Worth. She may have entered his car willingly, but somewhere on that journey, the situation took a terrifying turn. Perhaps she felt the sickening lurch of the car driving in the wrong direction. Perhaps she simply realized the mortal danger she was in. Maybe he tried another advance, or maybe it was both. When she fought to escape, a vicious struggle erupted. Investigators believed the severity of his own injuries told a grim story. The fight had been extraordinarily violent. By the time she was forced into the trunk, they theorized Christina was either dying or had already succumbed. Her father's words haunted the investigation. She was petrified of the dark and suffered from crippling claustrophobia. The thought of her trapped in that pitch-black space, alone, terrified, and fighting for her life was a horror almost too great to contemplate. And in a final, cruel twist of fate, she had likely felt perfectly safe walking beside Enrique that night. Her fear of darkness, her family said, was so severe she slept with the light on. In the beginning, Enrique had actively suggested that police should investigate Hunter more thoroughly. He had even insinuated that Hunter could have been involved in Christina's disappearance long after Hunter had been officially cleared. Now, Hunter had agreed to take the stand in court and detail his exact movements on the day she went missing. Up to that point, he had invoked the Fifth Amendment, remaining almost completely silent in public. But the tables had turned dramatically when Hunter himself was arrested just a week prior to Enrique. He was now serving a prison sentence after pleading guilty in a conspiracy to distribute ecstasy. The drug sale he made to an undercover agent on the night Christina went missing had ignited a sprawling federal trafficking investigation. He was offered a deal. Hunter agreed to deliver truthful testimony, and in return, he received a guarantee that nothing he said could be used to prosecute him for federal drug offenses related to the case. He confessed to making catastrophic mistakes. He admitted to his drug addiction and conceded that his actions in the wake of Christina's disappearance looked appalling. Instead of desperately searching for her, he was getting high with friends. His judgment had utterly failed. He spoke with raw honesty about the friction in their relationship and the profound regret that haunted him. But on one point, his story never wavered. He swore he had no part in what befell her. He insisted he was completely shattered by the entire nightmare. All the while, the case against Enrique was mounting. Surveillance footage, DNA analysis, cell phone location data. A detective testified that Enrique's phone contained a gallery of horrors, a multitude of images and videos capturing women in scenes of violation, bondage, mutilation, and torment. Yet, Enrique's legal team insisted that every piece of the prosecution's evidence was questionable. They argued that since both Enrique's and Christina's cars were processed at the same facility, the possibility of cross-contamination was real. No security cameras captured her actually setting foot inside his vehicle. As for cell tower pings, they argued the technology is far from perfect. Then, in September of 2016, following nearly 2 full days of intense deliberation, the jury returned with its decision. We, the jury, find the defendant guilty of aggravated kidnapping as charged in the indictment, and it is signed by Bill Rice, presiding juror. Enrique was convicted of aggravated kidnapping, a first-degree felony. The reading of the verdict was a pivotal moment. And yet, despite the conviction, one gut-wrenching question still hung in the air. Where was Christina? The sentence: life in prison. It was the judgment handed down by the judge to Enrique Orochi. Judge Mark Rush took mere minutes to deliver the maximum penalty, a sentence of life behind bars. In total, 5 members of Christina's family addressed the 26-year-old Enrique Orochi directly as they delivered their victim impact statements. Throughout their words, Orochi seemed entirely detached, looking away and rocking in his chair. As her family spoke of their pain, he appeared to smirk. His callousness was not lost on them, and they made it clear that while he rotted in a cell, their search for Christina would never end. For once in his life, he needs to tell the truth. That's what doing the right thing means. Tell us where Christina is, because he has zero remorse for what he did. It doesn't affect him in the slightest. Even the life sentence didn't seem to faze him. I hope the reality hits him when he gets there, and I hope he receives everything that's coming to him. No one from Orochi's family was present in the courtroom for his sentencing. This life sentence stipulates that he must be incarcerated for a minimum of 30 years before he can even be considered for parole. Enrique later filed an appeal, petitioning for a new trial. That petition was denied. He gave an interview from prison, stating, quote, "I want to apologize to the Morris family for not being able to help them. My family and I pray for them constantly and for Christina's well-being," end quote. He flatly refused to discuss what transpired after they drove into the parking garage. "All of that DNA in my trunk, I have no explanation for how it got there. It might have been cross-contamination. It might have been planted since they had no other person of interest." Enrique was adamant that the case against him was built on a foundation of circumstantial evidence. And to this day, he insists that the police should have investigated Hunter more thoroughly. "I've surrendered my life to God's will. He alone knows when I'll be released. It's in his hands. I still believe in justice. It isn't right to be punished for a crime I did not commit, and I will contest this for the rest of my days." Christina's family's response was simple: "We'll fight too." The verdict delivered a sliver of justice, but it left the most painful question unanswered. Where is she? Her family's search was relentless, a daily ritual of pain. Her father would venture out alone, undeterred by pouring rain or the blazing Texas sun. It made no difference. He pushed through dense brush and across empty landscapes, his eyes scanning every foot of ground, desperate for a clue, for anything. Her mother made an even more profound sacrifice. She quit her job and moved to a different part of the state, all so she could dedicate every hour of her life to the search. Finding her daughter was now her sole purpose. Though investigators assumed Christina was gone, her family clung fiercely to hope. They had to believe she was still alive, held captive somewhere against her will. Her mom, Johnny, continued to call her daughter's phone. Each day, another message was left, a desperate plea into the silence. She poured her heart out in letters, in posts on Christina's Facebook wall, chronicling every thought, detailing her every feeling, painting a picture of the life Christina was absent from, clinging to the hope that Christina might suddenly see them. "Christina, honey, it's mommy. Oh, I've missed you, more than words can say. Just give me any detail, anything at all, and I will be there in a heartbeat. I love you more than anything. Hugs and Joseph are coming for you. Bye, sweetheart." 4 years bled away after Christina vanished. 2 years had ticked by since Enrique was locked away. Then, in March of 2018, a shift. Investigators were drawn back to a familiar search area, a desolate piece of land near Anna, Texas, bordering a bustling construction zone. A new housing development was taking shape. As crews graded the earth and cleared the brush, a construction worker stumbled upon something horrifying: a human skull. And just a short distance away, more skeletal fragments were uncovered. Tattered pieces of fabric lay near the scattered bones. It wasn't long before forensic analysis delivered the grim confirmation they all dreaded. The skeletal remains, and the clothing found with them, were positively identified. They belonged to 23-year-old Christina Morris. The agonizing years of not knowing were over. At long last, they had found her. The 3.5-year ordeal to find the abducted 23-year-old kidnap victim, Christina Morris, has reached its tragic conclusion here in a field just east of 75 in Anna. Sources inside the investigation have verified for Fox 4 News that the human remains discovered at this location yesterday are indeed those of 23-year-old Christina Morris. But with 4 years lost to the elements, establishing a precise cause of death proved impossible. And despite the discovery of her body, prosecutors filed no new charges against Enrique. One legal analyst clarified the challenge. To even attempt a capital murder conviction, the prosecution would have been required to establish a secondary kidnapping, one distinctly linked to the murder itself. Mounting a new capital case, however, was deemed a long shot. Enrique's kidnapping conviction was already on the books. The legal principle of double jeopardy stood in the way. No one can face trial for the same crime twice. He is already in prison for life. In reality, even a successful murder prosecution would have been symbolic. It would not have added a single day to his sentence. And then, the world stopped. The pandemic arrived, and just as it did with countless other legal matters and cases, the wheels of justice ground to a near complete halt. For me, this is a day of profound joy, but I can tell you it is also my deepest sorrow. But my plan is to celebrate her life today, and I just have to find the strength to get through this. I believe I can. You will. Yes. We are just so incredibly thankful for the immense support we've received, for the outpouring of love people have shown for Christina. I know she sends it back. I hope you all can sense our spirit here, just like we can. The moment I stepped into that church, I felt it. As of this report, Enrique has never confessed to his crimes. The truth of what transpired in the darkness of that morning is a secret he keeps. Christina's mother is certain her daughter would be proud of them, proud of their relentless search, of their unwavering refusal to ever give up. Now, finally, they could bring her home to rest. They could find a sliver of comfort in the knowledge that she was no longer lost. Her stepmother, Anna, expressed, "Now there is a destination for us, a place where we can be with her, to speak to her." But this was never the resolution we prayed for. And yet, a profound calm comes with knowing she has returned to us at last. Christina's sister Sarah shared that sentiment, adding, "We weren't searching for closure, even if that's a real thing. All we ever wanted was Christina.